Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Park Rangers, what's the oddest thing you've seen on the job? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was a ranger in Yosemite a few years ago, a tourist urgently flagged me down at a parking lot. I asked, "How can I help you, sir?" He said, Miss Ranger, my daughter forgot her birth control pills on her camping trip. Do you have any?" I responded that I absolutely did not, but I could give him directions to the nearest medical clinic. After a short pause, he said, "I'll give you $20 for 6 pills. I'm not a ranger, but I've worked in parks and rec before. I worked in a 148-acre sports park, pretty large area. One hot summer morning, a lady was walking and complained about a really bad smell out in the back of the complex behind the 4 baseball fields. I went to check it out. As I approached the brush, I noticed flies, a lot. What it was someone took old burlap potato sacks and had stuffed them full of dead, rotting chickens, like 12 bags. I was the lucky one who had to get a shovel and scoop them up into the tractor bucket. The smell was gut-wrenching, maggots dripping from every bag as I lifted them. They must have driven their truck back there because this area was undeveloped. It was mainly brush and trees. I guess it was a farmer who had about 24 chickens just up and die, who knows. They must have been diseased. It was one of the grossest things I've had to do. Whatever made them think that a sports park was the right place to dispose of dead fowl, I'll never know, because they get away with it. Funny story told to me by a ranger in Yellowstone when I was doing some research there. They had a female elk and calf move into the area around the ranger cabin, no problem. They would park their vehicles and run like heck for the cabin door. But one evening, they heard a voice shouting from up a tree outside. Their boss was returning from time off, and no one had bothered telling him. Someone came into the visitor center wearing one of those realistic wolf head masks instead of a COVID mask, like the kind where the jaw moves when they talk. I looked up and saw the dude coming in and legit wondered if I was about to get robbed, but he just got a map and asked about birds and then left and took the mask off. Somebody once dumped a bunch of live chickens in the woods and my coworkers and I had to try to catch them. Lots of people were driving by and they would see the park police car off to the side of the road with the lights flashing and they'd slow down all worried and then they'd see us sprinting after chickens and start cracking up. There was once a beaver just lying next to a slightly elevated footpath by the pond. Like literally, if you knelt down you could have touched it. We all assumed it was dying, but partway through the day, it moved to a more shady spot, and then in the evening it got up and swam away. I don't know what the F was up with that dude. This isn't quite as odd, but it just happened today. We got some new kayaks a while ago, and I was helping some volunteers go out in them today. We took one of the boats down, and it had an old bird's nest under the seat. So naturally, we chucked the nest off to the side and I commented that they clearly hadn't cleaned these boats before they sent them to us. A minute later, someone goes, "There's babies in there." Sure enough, we just yeeted a fresh nest of baby birds onto the beach. 2 of them had fallen out and they were just barely growing feathers. I scooped them back in and put the nest on the next kayak on the rack. The parents found it, but were visibly confused. I felt so bad. Those baby birds were probably like, what the F just happened? This just proves that sometimes beavers want to be touched or they just want to go to a shady spot or swim away. Not a ranger, just wanted to give a shout out. During my trip to USA, every park ranger I met was good people. Special shout out to the respectably aged ranger working at the Washington Monument. Asked us where we were from, to which I replied Latvia. Man goes into apparent deep thought, and I'm fully ready to judge the American for not knowing European geography. No, not only did he know his geography, but then he wished us a good day in Latvian, heavily accented but perfectly serviceable. Language spoken by 2 million people worldwide? Made our day. Absolutely made our day. I was a park ranger in the 90s in Oregon. One of the oddest things I witnessed was the guy we contacted with to pump the poop out of the latrines. He would eat his sandwich for lunch in one hand with no glove, while holding the poop pumping tube in the other hand, also with no glove. The smell, of course, was horrible. I saw him do this a few times. A bunch of guys came running into the ranger station carrying their buddy with his pants partially pulled down or up and was bleeding because his buddies had dared him to sit on a barrel cactus and, of course, he had had about 10 to 15 needles in his butt. We were 25 minutes to the nearest town and about 2 hours from the nearest hospital. The town had a rotating doctor at an urgent care center, but really equipped to handle something like this. So we had to call in a medevac helicopter to pick him up. His buddies were freaking out. Not a park ranger, but recently started working with one on a roadway project outside a beachfront park in Florida. When we asked him about his wildlife that he had encountered that we would need to look out for, he said, "Rabid nudist." No, this was not a nudist beach. He said they get very aggressive when trying to sneak into the park at night. We were working at night, and they in fact are very aggressive. I worked nights as a ranger for a fairly urban city that had a variety of small to medium-sized parks I was tasked with patrolling, the largest being around 80 acres, but being in an urban area mostly consisted of removing people sleeping in their cars after sunset, as all the parks were fenced and had to be locked at night. I'd say about 90% of the time, I came across a car belonging to someone down in their luck, just looking for a safe place to sleep in their car. Had a lot of sympathy for those people, but unfortunately my job was centered around keeping the surrounding parks empty at night and had to be the asshole telling them to leave or sleep somewhere else. The other 10% of cars I'd come across had a distinct fog to their windows that meant one of two things. Either they were smoking weed or getting it on. I had a very loud intercom inside my patrol car that brought me great joy when rolling up on unsuspecting lovers, engaging in a little car fun, and watching them scramble to get decent. I know, dick move. But it was one of the few bits of excitement I had on the otherwise long and monotonous nights. The oddest and most memorable, however, I had traded the night for a day shift, which, weirdly enough, had its fair share of foggy windows as well. I went to check a parking lot behind a rec center that often had people trying to stay out of sight for good reason, and noticed one lone car with the classic window fog. As I approached their vehicle, I noticed an older man having his own fun in the bushes within arm's length of the car window. Older dude outside the car takes off at the sight of my car, and I say on my intercom, "Put your clothes on, can't do that here." To my surprise, the young couple came up to my car after dressing to apologize, and I tell them to grab their friend that ran away and to leave the park. Their eyes widened and didn't understand what I meant by friend. I had to explain to this couple no older than 25 that there was an older male masturbating while peeping into their window, and I was not kidding. They were both mortified. I went to look for the older guy, but at this point he had fled the park. I reported the incident, but nothing much to go off of other than a rough description of what he looked like, and the two lovers didn't want to stick around for a police report. I never saw the couple or the guy in the park again. I'm not a ranger, but my grandfather was for a brief while at Yellowstone in the 30s. He told a story of a park visitor who gave a bear a package of bacon, but took it back when it appeared the bear couldn't open it. The bear mauled her. Did they have Darwin Awards in the 1930s? They should have. Warning, this is a bit long, but it is true. In the late 70s, I worked as a park ranger for a summer job while going to university in the fall and winter semesters. As long as there were no forest fire ban, we allowed campers to have campfires on their campsites. One wet Sunday morning after a very rainy night, I was coming off of a midnight to 0800 shift. I was alone on duty in a park with over 200 campsites, something that wouldn't happen now. Around 0700, I hear this god-awful screeching coming from the tenting side of the park. I ran over to find a guy rolling around in the dirt with his friend trying to douse the fire on his pants. They had not made kindling for their fire before the rain had started the night before. Instead, they had gotten drunk. Now, in the wet, cold morning, they wanted to start a fire to warm up and probably to cook over. They were probably still drunk or sober. They were stupid. It was so wet that it would have been a challenge to get the fire going with split kindling, but it was impossible to set fire to round chunks of firewood. So, one of these guys was spraying barbecue lighter fluid on the wet firewood when the other guy struck a match. Some of the lighter fluid had spilled down his nylon rain suit, When it caught fire, the plastic had melted into this guy's legs. Anyhow, the guy's legs were burned pretty badly. The park is 50 kilometers from the city, where the hospital is. I got the guy in the cab at the old 4x4 truck that we used to haul picnic tables and outhouses around, and I beat it for the city, doing everything that old truck could do so on the highway. The old truck was so badly out of line that sometimes it felt like the truck wanted to go crab-like across the road. I had the windows down, no air conditioning in the truck, and the thing was rattling like a bucket of nails. Keep in mind that there were no cell phones then, and we only had spotty VHF radio coverage in the park. There was no way and no time to call for an ambulance. It was down to me and the old truck. The truck was an old beater, no overhead lights to flash, and no siren either. When I got to the city, I was going about 130 kilometers an hour. I hasten to add that this was a summer Sunday morning, and there was zero traffic, except for the cop. I met him, blew past him, and did not slow. He turned around and chased me, lights flashing and sirens screaming. He chased me right to the emergency entrance of the hospital like that. He was at my door as I was getting out, and he was yelling at me, losing his mind, until the smell hit him. The camper guy had gone into shock and was pretty well unresponsive, but the smell of the burnt skin and melted plastic was not something I want to smell again. I told the cop to hold on. I would be out to talk to him in a few minutes. I put the camper on my shoulder and carried him into the hospital emergency unit like he was a side of beef. Hey, it was over 40 years ago and I was in great shape back then. The nurses got the doctor and they started to work on the guy. After I got their particulars for the inevitable report, I went outside to the old park pickup. The police car was gone, but someone, I presume the cop, had thrown his guts up by the end of the park truck. About a week later, we were notified by the camper's family that he was stable and on the way to recovery, and life in the park went on as it had never happened. Well, that old beater served you and that camper really well. Great job. Not a ranger, but forest worker in a forest underneath Brussels. We were planting trees on the outskirts of what falls under our property. Hard to get there. The spot we needed to plant was in the middle of the forest, so we all go by foot, except for one who goes with the tractor and all the trees. When we arrive at the spot, we notice a big blue tarp, folded up and stuffed away near the base of a tree. Weird, I thought. How did this get here? Who goes through all this trouble to litter here? Oh well. We'll take it along with us, and we can put all of it on the loader of the tractor. But first, finish the job. So job is finished, day's almost over, and we gather everything to head back. And lastly, of course, the tarp that was left behind. We pick up the tarp, and we notice there was an army pack underneath. And worst of all, there was a barrel, like from a gun, sticking out. We were confused as F. We opened the pack to check it out, and it was an actual AK-47, discarded in the middle of the forest. Too bad the day was almost finished, as we had to call the police and they took their time getting there. Weird, never heard anything of it again, but there must be a lot going on in that city. I once got to see a squirrel kill a snake, normal nature being batshit crazy. The story gets even weirder because I warned a family hiking in the area to watch for snakes. So, we work all day on this trail, and at the end of the day, come out and have to stop at a check-in point. I go in and talk to the rangers, who we know very well, and chit-chat, and they say that a visitor came in and said that a ranger had killed a snake on the trail, and were wondering if we knew anything about it, since we were the only rangers on the trail. The person I was working with then brings out the camera, and we watch a 1 to 3 minute video of the squirrel fighting and killing the snake. TLDR. Watched a squirrel kill a snake and visitors thought I did it. PS. Wildlife crew loved the video, and also, no, I don't have the video, sadly. I'm not a park ranger, but once while camping I had my laptop and a live version of Google Earth. I decided to see if it would pull our position up. Well, in complete blackness at 2 a.m. when we hit find, this big huge light came down out of the sky, hit the ground where we were, and it went back up. The park ranger saw it, came over with the most puzzled look on his face, and was like, "What the actual extraterrestrial hell was that?" in the most professional tone of voice possible. It freaked us all out, actually. Nothing out of the ordinary, but the first time I saw a mountain lion, that was pretty creepy. The sun was setting, and I got off work, Rocky Mountain National Park, and I was sitting in the back looking at long peaks, and I saw something glide across the open space, low to the ground, and walked super smooth. It was about 40 to 50 yards away and went over a hill, and I saw a long tail follow. I can see why it's difficult to track or spot them. There's been a few, some pretty sad and distressing like the suicides, some disturbing like skulls and pentagram, and lots of people getting it on. The one that sticks in my mind the most was when we were burning. We had a chopper flying around lighting up by dropping jellied petroleum. I'm patrolling the boundary. The chopper abruptly spots lighting up mid-run and turns away. The bombardier gets on the radio and tells us there's people in the burn area. We drive in, and a couple have spread a blanket out and are going for it, surrounded by burning heaps. Told them to get out of there. They seem surprised. Not a ranger, but I came across some poor woman at Arches National Park who was stuck in the middle of the road because her car was struck by lightning. It wouldn't turn on or budge. I offered to pull her to a more safe location, but she couldn't even shift the vehicle into neutral since it wouldn't start. It took a good half hour to find a ranger to tell them because there's no cell service or phones in the park. I don't know what happened to her. I hope she was okay. Not a park ranger, but I've seen some wacky shit up near Lake Powell. Two come to mind though. The last time I was there, I was out fishing with my dad on our little boat, chilling in some little cove. I hear a noise, look up, and a giant-ass plane flies right over us. Couldn't have been more than 400 feet above us. I couldn't get any pictures or video, and I couldn't recognize the plane at all. Different trip. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, riding in the front of my dad's truck while he's driving us back as usual. It was like 3 in the morning. I was about to pass out when I see a big effing shadow dart across the road. What the hell was that? I sure as hell don't know. My dad also makes a noise in surprise, and we both just kinda sit there. He asks, "You see that too?" Yeah, I sure as hell did. We both look back out to the road and see 2 bright yellow eyes off in the bushes up ahead of us. We didn't go under 60 until we reached Flagstaff.